Hi everyone, Claire here, and today I am making a pendant out of ice resin and a bag of fruity tea. So you're going to need some resin, a mixing and measuring cup, a stick and your tea, and some scissors. So I'm going to take my part A of my ice resin, and I needed quite a lot of it because the mold I'm using is actually quite deep. So I'm going to actually cheat and take the top off and put a big blob in and then measure out. So you need exactly equal amounts of part A to part B. So a measuring cup comes in real handy, and the ice resin measuring cups have actually got markings on the side, so it makes it really simple to work out what you're doing. And here you can see that part A is actually quite a lot thicker than part B, and it's really hard sometimes to squeeze out. I actually filmed this when it was quite cold in my room, and it is really difficult to squeeze it out of the tub when you're actually in a cold room. If you want to make it a bit easier, if you warm your bottle up, just the part A, just gently on a radiator for a couple of minutes, and it becomes a lot more viscous, a lot less thick. So here I am taking part B, and I'm just going to top up. So we've got the two equal parts, and then I'm going to take my stirring stick, which is a lollipop stick, and start mixing. When you're done with your resin bottles, make sure you put the top back on and you keep them in an upright position, and try not to contaminate the bottles or you will contaminate your resin. Now, when you're mixing the resin, make sure that you are actually stirring it and you're not whipping it. If you do a whipping motion, then you will actually whip bubbles into it, and that makes it more difficult later on. While you're mixing it, the mixture is kind of milky. It's not milky as in white milky. You can kind of see that it's not mixed. When it's properly mixed, the whole of the container will become crystal clear, and whatever colour the resin is in your mixed tub, once part A and B are mixed together, is the colour that the resin will be when it's dry. And you will see me scooping around the edges often and at the bottom, and that is because I need to make sure that all of the resin is mixed together to get a good pour and a good set. So next I'm going to take my tea. I've got a pomegranate tea from a company called Novus, and it's a really beautiful looking tea. I'll show you a close-up in a second. It's got all kind of flower buds and leaves and all kinds of good things that you would expect in a nice pomegranate tea. But once you put that in resin, all of them little petals and everything look absolutely beautiful. So to actually add the tea to the resin, make sure that obviously your hands are clean and your resin is ready. You do need to set it aside once it's been mixed for a minute or so and let the bubbles start to actually rise naturally. But when you're putting your pieces in that you're including in it, make sure that you put them in slowly, and you make sure that they're evenly distributed. That makes it easier when you're actually mixing it together and you're mixing it in. But you do have to also remember that some items will actually float in resin. And in this tea's case, the yellow squares actually floated. So instead of being evenly distributed, they all came to the top, which was fine for me because that was actually the back of the pendant, which you'll see at the end. If it had been, the mould had been done the other way around, it would have been a big problem. I'm also not putting in the tiny scrap bits at the bottom. They're really just fine bits and dust-like bits. They're no good. They won't look good inside the resin at all. I'm mainly wanting the focal points, which is the flower petals and that sort of thing. So here you can see that the actual everything is actually evenly distributed, and you can actually see that once you leave it for a minute like I had done, that the big yellow chunks actually start floating to the top, and you can see they're starting to come to the top right there. So you can get a good idea while it's in your cup of what is going to happen if you leave it for a minute, basically. So now my mix is ready. I'm going to take my mould, which is a mould I actually did myself, and you can see that it's already got resin in the bottom. That's actually an already set piece of resin, and when I've got leftovers I do pour them into moulds, because the ice resin especially, it will make a seamless join with itself. So if you've already got one layer that's dry, the next layer will seamlessly join it. So I'm pouring in slowly and gently, and I'm trying not to get bubbles. This mould has a deep edge and I don't want bubbles to get trapped in that deep edge. So I'm just going to manipulate it and move it. I've worked with this mould a lot. It is a mould that I created myself, and if you do want one, I'm quite happy to make some more, so send me a message or have a look on my Etsy shop and you might find one there. But just say you want the pomegranate pendant mould and I'll know which one it is, and I'll get that sorted out for you, no problem. Okay, you can see I'm carefully putting all of the resin in, and I very luckily, and it was a complete guess, had made exactly enough for that mould. I thought I was going to have too much, so it was a good job that I thought I was going to have too much. And I've got like a load of bubbles that have already come to the top in like a foam, which sometimes happens when you put natural objects into a mould. And I'm just pulling the mould apart gently so I can make sure that no bubbles are trapped, and then I'm going to wipe them bubbles off. I do find it is easier to wipe that foamy bubbles when you're putting in things like tea into resin, to just wipe them away. It just makes the whole mould process go so much easier. And you can see them big yellow chunks again. As I mentioned earlier, they are floating to the top, but like I said, that's the back of the mould, so it's not an issue. I like to clean up the edges of my mould while I'm actually using it, and I don't know why. It's just a thing for me. You don't need to. It just peels off, so it's not a problem at all. Here we are, demoulding time, and I've left this to dry and set, and it was left for at least 24 hours. I think I was actually quite lazy and did it about 3 days later, to be fair. So my homemade moulds are really, really easy to demould from. They just slip out and they leave a beautiful finish, so they don't actually need that much finishing, as you will see in a second. Look at the shine right about now. Look at the shine on that. So if you've got a good quality mould, you will get a good quality cast from it. It's all about the finish of the mould, and this needs very little work to finish it off. Just a little bit of work on the edges, which is standard when you're doing any sort of casting. If you would like a copy of this mould, I am quite happy to make one for you, so send me a message or go to my Etsy shop and we'll sort something out. I hope you've enjoyed my video today, and I hope you check out my channel and like and subscribe. I've got lots of videos ranging on all different crafts and jewellery making, and my guilty pleasure, which is beauty box unboxings, which you'll see. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.